Hi guys, welcome back. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Casey and we cover Irish true crime here. So we're just going to get into today's case, which is another unsolved. Michael Gallagher was a 60-year-old man who lived in Tallaght but was originally from Mohill in County Leitrim. He had married and had 3 daughters. Unfortunately, his wife would pass away when the girls were young. He would go on then to marry a second woman who was actually from Spain, and they had 2 children. However, this relationship ended. It is said it was amicable, and she moved back to Spain with the kids, and he would visit a couple of times a year. Michael was described as hardworking. In fact, he was described as a workaholic. So he worked as a painter and decorator, and then he also drove trucks. And then, if that wasn't enough, on the weekends, he had actually bought his family home in Mohill. He bought out his siblings, so the plan was to fix it up. So he fixed it up on weekends, and then the plan would be that this is actually where he was going to retire. At the time our story takes place, Michael is with 51-year-old Sally Rogers, and they have been together 5 years after meeting in a local pub. She had also either been married or in a relationship, so she had children as well from another relationship and had her own home and her own job. And she actually describes this when talking about her relationship with Michael, basically saying they both had their own jobs, their own homes, their own lives, and so that they were together purely because they loved each other and wanted to be together and spend time together. So the couple lived in 49 Tymonville Road, Tallaght. I'm not sure whose home it was. I kind of had been under the assumption that it was Michael's home and then that she had moved in, because she discusses the plan to retire to Mohill, that she would then rent out her house. So I kind of just assumed that maybe she was already renting out her house and was living in Michael's house, but I could be wrong on that situation. So our story takes place on the 18th of January 2007. Michael would do a few bits that day. He would go to B&Q to collect, supplies for his job. And I'm not sure then if it was because of the way they work, but they were both having quite a late dinner that night. So they had only kind of finished up their dinner, and it was 10 p.m. And at about 10:06 p.m, there was a knock on the door. And Sally went to answer it, thinking it was the milkman. So she opened the door wide and put out her hand to take the receipt from, one of the lads from the milkman. At this point, 2 men wearing what has been described as both balaclavas and ski masks started just coming into the house. And the one in front was holding a hammer. And Sally recalled, it's mad because I'm obviously explaining this in kind of longer time, but if you imagine how this is all going through someone's head. She recalled that Michael had told her that there had been a row, an argument, 2 doors up earlier. And so to her it clicked, and she said, "You're in the wrong house." But the man with the hammer just kept coming. And so she walked back into the kitchen. She said she was afraid to turn her back to him in case he hit her. At this point, Michael has come over to this side of the kitchen. As Sally backs into the kitchen, the man with the hammer is, on her. The second man, who never talks, heads towards Michael. So the first man with the hammer will say, "Get down," and he begins to hit her. Now she thinks that he's going to hit her in the head, and it's going to be just over. She won't remember anything. She won't feel anything. But he just begins to hit her on the legs, hit her on the arm and stuff. And I think it was to get her down on the ground. So Sally gets down on the ground, and she sees the second man head towards Michael, and he's holding an umbrella. And he puts his hand into the umbrella and pulls out a knife. And at this point, she says, Michael is saying, "You're in the wrong house. You're in the wrong house." And that she can hear the fear in his voice. Sally then, most likely because the man is hitting her with a hammer, closes her eyes and covers her head. And she is lying on the ground. And she would say that she didn't hear the attack. She said she didn't hear Michael fall. And that when she then opened her eyes, the 2 men were gone and Michael was lying on the ground. And as she got up, she could see that he was in a pool of blood. She would talk about how she had been with her sister when she passed, and that when she started to walk towards Michael, she knew it wasn't good. And in a moment of panic, no one knows how they would react in this situation unless it happened to them. So in a moment of panic, she didn't ring the emergency service, she just ran out the house and started screaming. Neighbours came and the neighbours rang emergency services. Sally would say that she couldn't go back in. She didn't want to go back in. And so a neighbour's son went in to check on Michael. And then in one article I read, it says that another neighbour was also in there, and that at this point Michael was conscious and that he had said, "I'm dying." She would travel with him to Tala Hospital. And in the purest forms of coincidence, Michael's two daughters, Orla and June, were in Tala A&E. Orla had had an infection in her foot, and after a couple of days they decided that she should go up and be seen. So they were waiting hours, as you are, in A&E. Now, if you've ever been in an A&E or an emergency room, you'll know that like you're kind of sitting around, but you can see when paramedics and stuff are bringing in someone, from an ambulance on a trolley. June and Orla would say that they saw a man being brought in on the stretcher, and that, the paramedics and the garda were with him, and that obviously from that distance, from that angle and stuff, you wouldn't even, why would that be even in your head? And then they saw Sally, distraught, and the horror started to flood. And they followed Sally into the bathroom, and she told them that their dad had been stabbed. The two of them, in hysterics, ran out to reception and said, "Has Michael Gallagher been brought in here?" They were then brought to a room. So I don't know, this is a source from actually the daughters talking, so I don't know if it was then that they were brought into the same room as Sally, or were they told separately, but they were basically told that their father had died. Michael's funeral would be held on January 27th, and he would be laid to rest in his hometown of Mohill. The post-mortem would show 10 stab wounds to the neck, chest and back, which to me makes it sound like he had already either started to turn away or actually start to fall, and they continued stabbing. And these stab wounds would pierce several organs, including the heart. There were cuts on his hands showing defensive wounds. A lot of the time when things like this happen, we all immediately think gangland, or something, drugs, something, crime. And I'll be honest, when I first heard of this case, that's what I thought. I thought, well, obviously there was some sort of, you know what I mean? These things don't just happen, for the most part. There are those cases, but for the most part, someone comes to your home and kills you, there's a reason. And I admit that I thought that. And then when I started to look into the case, because his family, his friends, his neighbours were and are still completely baffled as to why this happened to Michael, because they said there were no obvious motives that they could think of, and he had no connection to crime. Like I said, he was a workaholic. All he done was work. Your friends, your family might say that. But Gardaí said that Michael Gallagher had no connections to crime. They could not find anything. He had no previous arrests or convictions. He just didn't, there was nothing, there was no little whispers or anything connecting this attack to organised crime or gangland. The Gardaí would follow through with 480 lines of inquiries, and 360 statements were taken. Through numerous appeals and appearances on Crime Call, no suspect or suspects has ever been identified. But even more mysteriously, no motive has been identified. The knife and hammer that were used in the attack were never found. There was only one description of one of the attackers, and even then it was only in one random source. Wasn't even on the Garda appeal. And is that one of them was approximately 5'11", and he had a fawn coloured coat on. In the days after Michael's murder, Sally would go to the Garda station, as is normal, and talk to the Gardaí about, anything and everything to try to figure out what was going on. And she said she was there for 6 to 7 hours. She said that you're not like the murder victim's wife or partner, you're just part of the investigation, is what she said. It was 9 months before Sally could go back to the home that she shared with Michael. At first, she said that she just couldn't. She couldn't go in after what happened. She said she's constantly getting, flashbacks and nightmares of what happened, and of seeing Michael and all of this. And she just didn't think she'd be able to go in to their home anymore. And she said after 9 months, she was kind of, it kind of hit her then, like, that is the home that she shared with Michael, her love, and she wouldn't let anyone stop her from being there and living in his home, or in their home, and in his memory. She said that she would often ask for meetings for updates throughout the years with Garda, but that essentially they have said that they won't be looking at it again unless someone comes forward with like a statement, not just like kind of random little tidbits. It has to be an actual substantial chunk of information before they look at it again. She has said that she thinks the two men were hired. Now I'm going to come to that and actually talk about the different kind of theories that we could look at. But she says that she thinks they were hired. Now again, I don't know, we don't know what they looked like really, so in my head I just picture these two kind of lads, arriving in, but it could have been more professional, more sinister, I don't know. She would say in later years that she had once been, very devout in her religion, and that she has lost her faith since what happened to Michael. It is said that she has no contact with his family, so I assume his daughters. Now, there are many reasons for that. They may not have been close in the first place, and just because they may now share this tragedy doesn't mean that it means that they're now going to be, close. Could be more to it, we don't know. Sally is the most outspoken on the appeals for Michael. I found a couple from his daughters, so whether it's that they choose to be more private about their grieving and about their appeals and stuff, but they have said that, again, they almost think like if he had been involved in crime, at least then there was a reason, as mad as that would sound. But they know he wasn't. They know he was a good man. And it makes all of this more heartbreaking because it was so random. They also appeal for anyone to come forward who might know something, especially, as I say before, as years pass, people's loyalties change, different things change, and people may feel more comfortable now coming forward. Guys, that's really it on the actual case and the actual information. But I am going to just go through the random kind of theories that there could be. And again, a lot of these are just they came into my head for a split second. I decided to include them. So as I said, the most obvious one is that there was a gangland connection, organised crime connection, drugs or something. Apart from his family, everybody there, and Gardaí themselves saying that there was no connection, you also have to look at then other gangland hits. They're 99% of the time a gun. Sadly, we have heard many cases where someone knocks on a door, the person opens, and boom, that's it, they're gone. And the killer is gone, the shooter is gone. They rarely get into the home, unless it's a case that the person who answers the door isn't the person they want and they have to go into the home. And that has happened before. But for the most part, it's a gun. People aren't using knives for those type of killings. A knife is much more personal. I'll get to that. Also, sticking on the gangland thing, if it was a case then it was mistaken identity, the Gardaí believe that they would have known. They would have heard, through the grapevine, the criminal grapevine, that, did you hear, they got the wrong guy, they fucked up, whatever. And or that you'd then hear about the actual intended target being hit. The row, 2 doors up. Was that just a random coincidence, or was that something to do with it? Was that someone coming back, like, well, I'll be back later type of thing, and came back but got the wrong house? Would it have been a case of it's the 6th house up on the left but they miscounted, or something like this? Would we have heard more? Like, we have to trust the Gardaí done their jobs and that they done the investigation and that they would have looked into these things. When they were told there was a row 2 doors up, they would have spoken with that house, they would have spoken with neighbours, they would have spoken with, And that leads me on to the other one I'm just going to mention, because I'm sure some of you are thinking it, and that's that Sally had something to do with it. Whether it was that Sally done it herself, or that Sally, like that, hired someone to do it. Or was it a Freudian slip when she said that? Doing it herself, I don't think so, because she could have stabbed him. She could have even hit herself with the hammer or whatever. Then she would have had to get rid of him. She would have then obviously had to get changed, and I think there would have been too much work to do that and then call the guards or run outside, because again, they will have known when he died. Like, he died quite shortly after arriving at Tal Hospital, so they would have known when it happened. Then, if it's a case that she hired someone to do it, again, Garda would have been looking at her phone calls, text messages. They probably even looked at her bank account to see, like, that was a random kind of amount of money taken out. So again, I have to trust that that was followed. One random thing was about the job where he drove trucks, and it was kind of like, could he have been approached to move something that he shouldn't be moving? And was it a case that he refused to do it? Was it a case he took some of what he did? You know, anything like this. Again, I think you're tying it back to organised crime, and you're tying it back to gangland hits, which are typically with a gun. If it happened to be one of his children, all his children were adults obviously at this stage, could one of them have been involved in drugs or this or that or whatever? Again, if it was a gangland hit, it would have been a shooting. And again, I think word would have gotten through the criminal grapevine. If it was more a personal kind of vengeance thing, would you not say it? Then I feel like they would have said, you know, to Michael himself or to Sally, like, this is for blah blah blah, or tell blah 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 next time, or, you know what I mean? I think there would have been more information there. Now again, I'm just a randomer on YouTube. You don't have to take all my things as facts. I'm just trying to explore all possibilities so that you're not kind of saying, oh well, why didn't you say this, or why didn't you think that, or something. I'm trying to think as much. So the only other thing really is that it was something personal. The road could technically tie into that if it was a case that they got the wrong house, and that's why it was personal. That's why it was a knife. That's why they were in the home. Okay. For it to be something personal with Michael, Sally said that they very rarely even went out in Dublin, that they actually socialised on the weekends down in Mohill, because obviously that's where they were, if that's where he was at the weekends working on the house. So she said there was not even really like a possibility for something to have happened. You know, like, you know, you do hear these things like on a night out, someone said the wrong thing, or someone hit off the wrong thing. There actually, you know, like, there are horrific cases of that happening where people are murdered because of something slight. So she wouldn't put much weight in that, and I don't think I would. Could it be something else? Could it have been to do with a job that he was on? You know, like, there are dodgy things, like I told you about the murder of Marlo Hyland and Anthony Campbell being murdered. And that was a case of literally just, you know, wrong place, wrong time. As another tradesman, could Michael have just come across the wrong thing, seen the wrong thing, or just pissed off the wrong person on a job? The whole thing is that the knife is so personal. It has to be, and I think that's what the Gardaí are holding it to as well, that there has to be some sort of personal grudge, personal vengeance that they just haven't been able to find the information on yet. Like, even one of his daughters was saying, like, Michael was a big man, and like, you take a risk with a knife because you have to go closer than with a gun. So you take a risk that they could overpower you. They could then use the knife on you. You know, yeah, I think personally, I just think it has to be some sort of personal vendetta, grudge. I mean, it could even be something to do with Sally, an ex-partner of hers, or, you know, there could be something. I definitely think it's going to be a personal thing, and whether that's directly with Michael or someone he knows. But unfortunately, unless people come forward, this doesn't seem like it's going to be solved. It's now been just over 17 years. And even if for Sally to want to kill him, like, what's the reason? You know, they're not married, so she's not just going to automatically get his money or his business or his home. His children are most likely going to get that. I don't know, they seem very happy. I haven't seen anything to contradict that from other family members or friends or anything like that. Guys, that's it on this case. It's a little bit of a longer one in terms of the unsolved. It's still not as much information as I would like to have been able to give you. I'll put up the information for, you know, the appeal and stuff like that. And yeah, let me know what you think of the case. Let me know, do you think that it could be gangland or one of the other theories that I said? Or would you agree that it obviously has to have been something more personal and we just don't know yet what it was? Guys, I'm not going to ramble on. I'm getting very good at not rambling on, haven't I? So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for your support as always. And yeah, have a lovely week. See you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.